exciting right now. It is time for Ask Evelyn Kung. And we're here with Evelyn. Isn't that magical how that just happened? She just appeared here. And you are an amazing person, madam. You've been working in this field for how many years?
26 or 7, something like that.
I
stopped counting.
An amazing amount of time. Came in as a therapist and have just continued to work in this field, and you travel all over the place. You're kind of like the magic touch. This is what parents say about you all the time. If you have the opportunity for Evelyn to come and have eyes on your case, it is a really good day in your life because amazing things happen. You just get things. You really do. You are a light, and everybody adores you. From the kids to the parents to the therapists, everybody just thinks of you as that wonderful, brilliant, mothering mind who comes in and makes it all so simple. Often, Evelyn will say the thing that everybody goes, oh, like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So I appreciate you, and I know that everybody else does. So, and we appreciate you. From time to time, you get to come in and play this with us, and people write in and ask questions. So first question comes to us from a mom who writes into us on a semi-regular basis. And she said, my son is 14, has ASD, ADHD, and has a learning disability. At times, my son can be aggressive when he feels he is being told off, doesn't understand what's going on, or doesn't get what he wants straight away. He can't control his reaction, and I'm trying to help him divert the aggression by hitting a pillow, squeezing a stress ball, taking deep breaths. We've been practicing these techniques in the hope that we can use them when the aggression happens, but without success. There have been incidents at school when he feels he's being told off, but he really hasn't. And he tells me that he wanted to hit the teacher, but he doesn't. Unfortunately, with myself and my husband, this is not the case. And if he gets upset, the aggression is directed to us. We've tried ignoring the behavior, but he's getting bigger and stronger. Is there anything else I can be doing to help him and try to break his aggressive cycle? And we're sending you hugs, first of all, right?
This is a tough situation. These kids actually are more prevalent now. I see them all the time. I've been seeing them for a long time, probably for the last 10 years, a lot. But they weren't the common kids that we would see. Part of it was because the diagnosis was less when you have somebody that's so high functioning. People tend to want to choose to stick to the ADHD and the learning disorder. And then the ASD kind of gets tagged on later on because, you know, he's too high functioning, or he can do so many things, or he just doesn't want to do it. You know, a lot of different attributes of causality are thrown at these kids. And I think it's so hard. So congratulations that you actually have all three and that you're acknowledging all three, because it's all three in effect. So kids like this, you know, if I could come and sit here and say, okay, this is what you should do for aggression, it would be a mistake on my own. Because it's not just one thing that's causing all the aggression. You know, from the behavior analyst point of view, it's probably what we would call multiply controlled behavior, which means sometimes he does it for attention, sometimes he does it to get him out of things so he can escape. Sometimes he does it just because he doesn't know what else to do. You know, or sometimes he does it so he can get access to something. It's actually every single function across the spectrum of what functions of why we do things, and the aggression probably hits every single one, but it's different every single time. So you can't actually just have one intervention for all of it. It will never work. Congratulations in that he wants to feel like he wants to hit the teacher but does not.
Right.
That's great.
Yes.
It's a good, at least there's a stop point, and that part is controlled. But I do feel bad for all the families that have this kind of child, because the person that the child actually does get most angry at is their parents.
Yeah.
And the parents are the ones that become the target of the aggression and the frustration. And a lot of times it's just because they want to help and they're trying to do things, and they know their child best too. So they also know what reinforcers will help the kid. So the kid's like looking at the parents trying to get help, but when they can't, they just don't know what to do. And then that's when the target really comes into play. And first of all, just for these kids, what I've realized with a lot of them, because a lot of them are so intelligent. They know so much, and they can see the difference between themselves and their peers. They can see that other people get access to things, have more friends. Social things just come more easily, and they may not be able to express it, but they can see it because usually intelligence-wise, they're usually intact or really high functioning. Like intelligence is off across higher than most people. And the frustration that they see when they see that their peers have such an easy time is frustrating, but then they also see life as being really unfair because they don't know how to get access to all these things, and they can't figure it out, and they can't go read about it someplace. And that frustration of life being unfair, we would all be upset.
Yeah.
If we couldn't figure out how things worked, there would be a lot more of us
Absolutely.
being aggressive just because no one understands you.
Yes.
And though he talks, usually with these kids, there is a delay in language.
Okay.
And it's a delay in social language.
Which is a really important distinction,
Yes.
right?
They talk a lot, but they use very few words.
Okay.
So they speak on, these kids tend to speak very concretely. So everything that they say is very black and white, very concrete. But if that's the only way you talk, you're missing all the emotional aspects. You're missing physical states, how you feel, like are you cold, hot, a little bit cold, a little bit hot.
Right.
You're missing everything that has to do with emotions. You're missing an understanding of relationships because relationships aren't clear-cut. They're very much a continuum. So a lot of what's missing is what we would call flexibility. Flexibility in language, because initially they just don't even have the vocabulary to do it. I was just on a call with a similar kid right now, and I was telling them, the way he describes his continuum is it's my boyfriend or girlfriend, it's my friend, and that's it. There's nothing else, or you're my family or you're not. That's pretty much the three descriptions of his relationship.
So shades of gray are just not there.
The whole continuum is missing. They only have the extreme ends.
Right.
And when life is seen like that, that means you're either always a success or you're always a failure. And that just, it's horrible. The kids, their confidence, how they feel about themselves, frustration. Like I did all that work and I'm not getting any benefits from it. If they see, I had a kid who was like doing calculus and like 10 years old or something. And he was insistent that he was not good at math. And for years and years, he just kept saying he was. And I was like, we even showed him like grades from his class, like to show him, and he was just always insistent. And finally I said, what is the one thing that makes you think that you're really bad? Like, what happens in the classroom? Like, what actually happens? And the fact that the teacher will walk by and be like, oh, you need to erase this. And just the act of erasing mean he failed. Because his idea he was either going to be successful, which meant perfect,
Right.
or he was a complete failure if he wasn't perfect.
Wow, so that's a lot of frustration. I can't even imagine. I mean, I know how I feel. I'm the world's worst about customer service. If I go into a store and I ask for something, and I always tell the example of I went in to a Walmart store and said, do you have X, Y, and Z? And the woman said to me, she goes, well, that was X-lined, so, and then didn't finish the sentence. And I said, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? And I have language, right? And I said, I don't know what that means. And she goes, well, it means it was X-lined.
What is that?
Okay, so does that mean you have it or you don't? And she goes, well, it was X-lined. And I asked like 13 different ways to find out, so does that mean it's in, that it's gone? And she just kept answering with it's X-lined. And I got so mad, I had like a tantrum. And I said, would you stop saying that and use different words to tell me what X-line. I mean, I was a grown adult and having a tantrum in an aisle at Walmart because I could not get this woman to communicate in a way that I could understand.
Exactly.
I can't imagine what it would be like if that's almost every interaction you have. You have enough language to, do some things, but not to get your needs met.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
And so for these kids, they can't life is just unfair.
Yeah.
They just see they don't even understand how things work. And a lot of times it is the flexibility. It starts with language, I always say, because they have to have some kind of baseline of what they understand. And it can't be something that they've been told. Because just because they can told and they can repeat back whatever the rule is doesn't mean they actually understand the rule. And that's the problem with these kids too, is they can remember anything, and especially if they've been told something repetitively, they'll know the rule is when I get mad, I should hit a pillow. But in the reality of it, it doesn't help it at all.
Okay.
If I wanted to punch something, maybe hitting the pillow would work.
Right.
But if I'm frustrated because I've been trying to get access to something or someone or do something or learn how to do something and no one's telling me, hitting that pillow is not going to help at all.
Okay, so what can she do?
So, I always say, like, this is where you start with the flexibility. Like, if I'm using skills, so skills is our card curriculum, is I always say start with flexibility and start with language. So that's under executive function.
All right.
Teach them how to describe all the continuum of, I usually choose something that they have an opinion on, like food. Almost everybody has an opinion about food.
Okay.
Or maybe places they go. So they have to learn that continuum of like, oh, I like it a little bit. I sort of like it. I kind of like it. I don't really care about that. It's just a neutral thing. Or I don't really like that, but I will eat it.
Okay.
Or I like it when this happens.
Right.
Only. Like being able to describe all your feelings in between. Rarely in life do we say we love something or hate something.
Right.
At those extremes. Almost all our descriptions are in that gray, in that middle area. So if you can get kids to talk about all those, use those words in a non aggressive topic or non what they can identify as something you're trying to teach them.
Okay.
Do it with something that they really have a true opinion about.
Right.
And get them to learn that language. Then you take that language and you start applying it to social situations.
Okay, so these lessons are in skills, and for people who are new tuning in, skills is a tool. You can go to www.skills4, and it's the number 4 autism.com. You can do a free trial to check it out. The issue with skills, I'm just going to be honest, is that skills can do so many different things that often parents go in and they go, oh, this is overwhelming, I don't know what to do. And the truth is if you just focus on the one thing you went into it for and just do that, you'll find that it's an amazing tool. And then later on, if you discover, hey, I want to learn about other things that Skills does, for me, it's a lot like a Mac computer. I just want to check my email, right? So I'm just going to learn how to check the email. I'm not going to learn how to do everything else and edit. But you can on a Mac computer, right? But just go in to do what you want to do. So you were saying this is in the executive functions curriculum.
Well, I was going to say he's 14, so what might make it easier is there is a skills curriculum for older teens and adults. And even though 14 is kind of the cusp where you can go one or the other, it might be easier for you to use Skills Living. And it's skillsliving.com. And basically, it's for older teens and adults who come in, and there's 16 curriculum areas, and you basically choose what you want to work on. So if I'm only going to work on executive function, or I'm only working on social skills, you only have to do those 2 areas, the assessments that are at the start of each curriculum area, and then that'll help narrow things down for you a little bit more instead of everything else that's on there.
Because we talked about this 2 weeks ago, the fact that in Skills Living there's so much information that no individual would need all of it.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't, if there were things that you had deficits over here and you would be working on something over there, then you wouldn't need the stuff over here. It wouldn't be appropriate.
Yes.
And the vice versa.
Yes.
If you're working over here, you don't need the stuff over here. Because let's face it, the spectrum just gets so
wide.
much broader the older individuals get.
Yeah.
There are no 2 individuals that are going to need the same thing, and no one would need all of it.
Yes.
So don't even try to do all of it.
Yeah,
But
just go at what you think your need is, and go in. And maybe when you start it, you think, well, this doesn't quite meet it. But then you'll just look around and see, is there another area like personal responsibility? That's an area. And it's a smaller area because it's just basically how to take care of yourself.
And there is an area on self-regulation too, but what I love about skills is that when you open up a lesson, it also tells you what the prerequisites are for it. It's like going to college. You go, oh, well, I want to take this class, but the prerequisites are this, this, and this. I have to have those before I can do that. So you need to, when you see that prerequisite, you need to go back and teach the earlier lesson. I think that what's really fascinating and what I've heard from families is that often when they go and teach the prerequisite, things happen, and getting to that lesson is either happens on its own, like it just like miraculously happens, or it's ever so much easier once they've got the prerequisite, because often the prerequisite that's missing is the problem.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be something you'd think of.
Well, that's why with this aspect of like the aggression and everything, I always go back to language, and people always say, wait, no, he talks.
Right.
And I'm like, well, he talks, but does he have the right words, the right vocabulary?
Especially to get their needs met, because aggression often is because it's as if somebody's holding, now correct me if I'm wrong, but it's as if somebody's holding up a sign saying, I can't get my needs met any other way, so I'm going to do this.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just one of these things where you're starting with language, and then you are building up with interventions. This is where you do want to talk to a BCBA, because you need to find out what are the functions at different times.
Yeah.
And sometimes actually these kids are bright enough where I actually just write it out for them. These are 4 things. Why are you being aggressive right now?
Yeah.
Do you want something? Are you trying to get out of something? You just are so frustrated you don't know what else to do, you know, or do you just want our attention?
Yeah.
And sometimes these kids they're good enough where they'll just be like, that one,
Yeah.
you won't give me.
Right.
And then you have a way to address it, a better way to get something. And the thing is, when the kids are at the height of aggression or height of emotion, just like with adults, typical adults, you don't talk about things at that point.
Right.
They have to calm down first.
Right.
Once they calm down, then you can talk about it. You've stepped out of the emotion, and you can actually talk about ways to learn how to do this next time.
Right.
Like, what are better ways to get access to what you want? What are better ways to let us know you're frustrated without having to do this? And don't do it while they're frustrated.
Yeah.
They have to come down first from whatever, you know, emotional high they're at.
Yeah.
And once they're calm and you can talk about separately, they're much more logical, much more being able to reason out. And it's important that you just don't give them rules too. You can give them a rule because that will get them so far, but you'd also have to go back and talk about all the reasons for the rules, and that requires flexibility. They're not only going to see it in one place. There's a lot of reasons why, you know, they're getting mad.
Yeah.
And
Now, I happen to know that this mom is not in the United States. She's in a country where BCBAs are even more scarce than anywhere else. So normally we would absolutely be talking about make sure that you have a BCBA working with you on protecting yourself and you know, stances that you can take and ways that you can de-escalate and ways that you can prevent yourself from getting hurt and the individual from hurting you or hurting themselves. But what can somebody do if they're in a place where there's no BCBA? Are there trainings online to show parents how to deflect and how to, I mean, I know that, you know, I know that entities have these videos that they use internally and that they don't typically share them with parents because everybody's afraid that a parent will misuse the information and end up getting more hurt. And I think that's a real thing. But what is available for parents?
I think a lot of times it's like we have IBT, the Institute for Behavioral Training. They have a lot of videos. I don't know if they would have the exact one that you want, but those are valuable because they can tell you just how to find functional behavior.
Yeah.
And they can teach you just how to identify it, and then you can teach your son too how to identify it, and that just gives them more power.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because of this reason, and at least then you know
Yeah.
what area he's in,
Yes.
so that you can have more discussion.
Yeah.
Or, you know, coping strategies are good as long as the kids, you know, the typical coping strategies work, except they can't just be rules. The kids have to understand it for them to actually use it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't become effective. Otherwise, they're breathing, but they're not calming down.
Right.
You know, they're trying to do that. And there's some physiological aspect where if they do learn how to breathe slowly and breathe out slowly, just the oxygen will calm them down.
Yeah.
And a lot of our kids, I'll actually tell them, but a lot of times they don't do it right. They end up making themselves more hyper because they're breathing fast instead.
Yes.
So it's like, no, we're going to count to 10 and breathe out. So that, and then it's funny because inevitably, even if they've been doing it a long time, they look at me and they say, this is taking a long time. It's like, it's true. That's part of the effectiveness. If you
Right.
get fast, it doesn't help.
Right.
You know?
Well, I have to say, I've in recent years, I've become a big advocate of mindfulness. We have our mindfulness moment on Thursdays. And then 2 weeks ago, when I was at ABAI International Autism Conference, they had a workshop on mindfulness. And it was very eye-opening for me because I didn't know all the research that is behind mindfulness now. When used in conjunction with ABA, it makes ABA more effective. And that's doing mindfulness with everybody, with the individual who's on the spectrum, with the parent or caregiver, and the team that's working. If everybody is doing the mindfulness, everything is much more effective. Even if just one element of that three-legged stool is doing mindfulness, the ABA is more effective. So I'm going to be talking a lot more about that this year. But for the mom to, for you to find some strategies so that you have time during the day to be calm. Because I know when you're being hit and you don't know when it's going to happen, you're constantly feeling like it could happen at any moment. So finding a time during the day when you can ratchet that stress down, and also finding time to do that with the individual, it's like an insurance policy.
Well, one of the things that does work that with some of our kids, and families actually have a really hard time in putting it into place, and I saw it actually as a part of a therapy program, at a living, is they have this thing where if you're getting mad, the rule in the house is you have to go to your own room for 10 minutes.
Okay.
They set a timer, and in 10 minutes you can come out and we can talk about it.
Okay.
And usually that 10 minutes, the kids calm down, and at the 10 minutes they tell the kid you can either come talk about it or you can choose not to. And that way the kids can decide, is it worth it? Because to talk about it takes
energy
problem too. So it takes a lot of energy and so many things. And when they come out at 10 minutes, only that person talks. No one else can talk.
Okay.
If you have a rebuttal, you take another 10 minutes. And this is the part actually that parents have the hardest time implementing.
Right, I'm sure.
Is because they just want to respond back, and we're like, nope, the kid needs to feel heard.
That's right.
And so if the 10 minutes, no interruptions, no questions, no anything, and then you have to do another 10 minutes, and then the parents can come back, and then the parents get the right to talk without the kid interrupting.
I like this a lot.
And it works really well.
Okay.
It just takes a long time.
Yeah.
And putting it into place, you have to be very mindful about when you're doing it.
Okay.
But it really is something that is effective because then the kids feel heard and then the parents feel heard too.
I would imagine in the beginning has to be a reinforcer for participating in the rules of the 10 minutes.
Yes.
Because when you're starting to feel angry, if you're used to getting it to a fruition where you get to hit somebody, when it starts to escalate saying, okay, we've agreed you're going to go to your room for 10 minutes, there's got to be something in place like, and if you will participate in these rules, you will get
Yes.
X,
And
Y,
then
or Z.
initially it's immediate.
Right.
It's like you have to give immediate reinforcer for responding, following this rule in this way.
Okay.
But there's a lot of issues. I wish I could just say there was one way to treat this.
Right.
But there isn't one way.
That'll give her some things to think about.
Just
though.
some things, and you can roam around, and even with mindfulness, I love mindfulness. I don't know the ABA research recently. I know it from maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But one of the main issues with mindfulness, if you're bringing it over from somewhere else, is it goes back to vocabulary. Half of our kids don't even understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So the vocabulary part becomes really important about, the vocabulary used for mindfulness, because I'll ask the kids later what they know. They're like, they only know the definition that whoever told them, but it has no meaning to their life or have very little meaning, or it's not generalized and only has like one little corner. So then you're stuck because you're trying to do this mindfulness and they're just like over here still and you think they were down here already.
I saw this amazing workshop, and I heard 2 different workshops where they were talking about, there's a technique called surfing the wave. And you can Google that. I'm going to get somebody on the show to talk about it. There are lots of different techniques of mindfulness, but there's this thing called surfing the wave, and it's very specific and targeted and teaches them how to have the emotion that they're having and to ride it, to let it ebb and flow so that it goes through them and doesn't stick and escalate. That I thought was pretty amazing. Lots of other techniques too, but that's one that you can Google. Surfing the wave, mindfulness, and see what you come up with. All right, we've got to take a break, and then when we come back, we've got more of your questions, and I know you guys are writing in on Facebook as well, so stick with us.